So let's jump to the Man United, probably the biggest call of the entire week. I know there were other calls in the Villa match, and there was the penalty for Brentford that they got, which is just a nightmare for the ref because it's clearly a foul. It's clearly a foul in the box, and he just calls it outside the box, and then he has to get corrected by. That's got to be the worst feeling, but good job by them for getting it right.
Yeah.
So, um, where do you put the most amount of blame in this Man United West Ham situation? Is in your mind, is it on Michael Oliver for genuinely misusing VAR? Like what could lead to it? Because to me, it's a baffling one. I wasn't watching it live. I had to follow up with it after, and when I saw it, I genuinely couldn't believe what I just witnessed.
Yeah. If we're playing the blame pie, I'm probably going 60-40 Michael Oliver, okay? Just because I think it's like you're I want to make it 80-20 Michael Oliver, but the fact of the matter is I can't handicap my blame pie for David Coote just because he's fucking a liability. Like, you know what I mean? The fact of the matter is he's got to wear his big boy pants when he's a head ref, and he's got to make decisions based on what he truly believes he's seeing. And in that case, you can't tell me he went to the monitor and changed
See
that call based on conviction. He changed
that
it on why he thought they brought him to the monitor.
That's exactly where my issue was with it. I actually wrote down that, I don't think there was ever enough to send him to the monitor. Like,
Yep.
I don't even think there was enough to get involved. Like, I think he should be reprimanded for the application of VAR. Then, if you're going to apply VAR, I don't think there's actually a clear and obvious error in it. And I don't think that, based on the Premier League rules, it was enough to warrant that coming over. I made the comment earlier about Europe compared to England. You could see that type of a foul under the lower half of the shin get given in Europe. And, you know, that's very normal, maybe even in Spain. But I just feel like when you go to the monitor, and I know we give Anthony Taylor a lot of shit, rightfully so, but I'm pretty sure that in the entire time that VAR has been in the Premier League, only 4 times has a match official went to the monitor and came back and kept the call they called on the field after being sent to the monitor. And I think it's 2 or 3 times it's Anthony Taylor. Now, that might be because he's just the only prick enough to tell all of his freaking compatriots and coworkers, like, go bleep yourself, stop sending me to the fucking monitor if you don't want me to embarrass you. But I also think he does have some conviction with what he's calling on the field. Whether I agree with the calls, how I like his tactics on the pitch, or I think he's a great official, I at least give him credit for standing his own conviction. David Coote in that spot has to just get in his earpiece and tell Michael Oliver, I saw the exact same thing I saw on the field. There's no way
Yeah.
I'm doing this. There's no way
And
I'm giving a penalty here.
I think, like, at the end of the day, these guys have to be on the same page of like what is the purpose of the monitor? Is the purpose of a monitor to get a second look on a 50-50, or is it to talk about, or are you calling the monitor because there's a clear and obvious error, essentially, right? Like, and that really just defines the VAR intervention. Like, are we intervening in the best interest of the game to give referees a better look at a play that was bang, bang, 50-50? Or are we just really using this for clear and obvious errors? And then, because to me, then we get to the point where, like, why are we even calling over the monitor if that's what we're using it for? Because we're just putting these referees in a spot where there's more controversy.
Well, speaking of controversy, that decision directly led to Jared Bowen's, 90-minute +2 stoppage time penalty winner, and in turn led to Erik ten Hag finally out at Manchester United. So news came out this morning. It started to trickle out late last night that it would probably be happening. Um, I'm not sure who's more relieved this morning once the news actually happened, whether it's Erik ten Hag, it's the, hierarchy at Manchester United, or it's the players in that dressing room. Because I do think they actually did like Ten Hag at times, and I think they've actually played for him at times, at least a fraction of them. Um, we've talked a lot on this program, podcasts, in Discord, and just, well, because it's fun to make fun of them. We've talked a lot about Erik Ten Hag and his time at United. So let's not focus on the faults and the failures. Let's look quickly here, Paul. Let's talk a little bit about the options out there to replace him. And I'll give you a name. We'll talk quickly on it. Give me an idea. Do you think they're a possibility? They'd be a good fit, a bad fit? So the first one is obviously the guy who's in charge as of this morning, took over training today, Ruud van Nistelrooy. There as an assistant, named interim manager, but I thought it was interesting that they made it very clear, by all accounts, he has no chance for the long-term positions of the job, and they plan to hire someone within the next month for the full-time job. Like, they're not going to give him the caretaker role till the end of the year. Do you think they will actually be able to hire someone in the next month, employed or unemployed? And is this purely them saying we're not going to allow these dogs of players to go on a 6-match winning streak like they did under Ole, and we give this asshole a 3-year deal at the end of the year after he wins the Europa League?
I mean, usually when owners and clubs come out and make statements like this, that means there's been some pretty heavy discussions. They've actually made progress and solidified some things in the background. So my assumption is that there's somebody that is pretty much just got to put pen to paper, that all the agreements and a lot of those things has been flushed out. But again, we're talking about Manchester United, who has a horrible track record of proactively planning anything from a business standpoint. So it's going to be interesting. My thing is, like we talked about this, is like when you look at the managerial landscape, you have dinosaurs and you have recycled sort of like specialists, but you don't have any of these like sort of career managers who go club to club at that high level, like you used to see the Eriksons and like some of these past manager greats. I mean, Mourinho's kind of in his last years, right? But like in terms of like a lot of these guys that you saw just kind of rotating through the top clubs, there's fewer and fewer of those guys. So like I don't really know what their next best bet is out there. Are you gonna gamble it on some unknown, like from another league, or are you gonna go like I just don't know who's out there for them. That makes sense.
So let's look at the 3 big names that surface that are English that everyone's talked about. Graham Potter, Thomas Frank, Kieran McKenna. I think they all have reasons that make sense. Graham Potter's available right away. He's known for working with young players. United does have a good core group of young players, especially in Garnacho and some of the players they bought. Obviously, Diallo. There's a few of those players there. But I think Graham Potter wants more of a guarantee and a longer project, and I just don't see him getting that at United. Plus, how can they forget how bad those press conferences were when he was Chelsea manager and just looked like a guy with a deer in the headlights?
And that's the thing. I just think they've got too much pride to go for somebody who's failed at another big Premier League club that recent. Like,
So speaking of a guy not failing, if anything, maybe overachieving at his time and loved by the club that he's at, gets rumored with every big job, never seems to get even a sniff at the job. Is this the time that Thomas Frank has to say, thank you, Brentford? I appreciated our Danish connection, but if Manchester United comes calling, I got to take this phone call?
I don't know, man. Like, is the Danish national team better than Manchester United right now? Like, because, like, I mean, I just don't know how. I don't know how Frank goes into that side with that many issues outside of. There's so many variables that will be uncomfortable to him, whether it be Manchester, whether it be a big club, whether it be in not having 9 Danish nationals in the 16-team side. Like, there's just a lot of variables. Like, I don't know. It's I think that this job is not as attractive as a lot of people think it is for outside managers. And I think that the club has too much pride to gamble on an unknown or a mid-team manager. Like, I don't know that they would even think that like Frank would be like a guy that they'd want to go snag. I mean, I would if I were them. I think it makes sense.
Well, someone they were, you're teeing us up here, someone that is at a lower club that was on their radar supposedly over the summer, but then signed a 4-year deal, is Kieran McKenna, former number 2 or youth team coach there and assistant coach, I think, under Ole or Jose, one of them. He was very well respected by the players, well respected by management, including the new owners and Enos and Sir Jim Radcliffe. But he signed a 4-year deal this summer. Ipswich hasn't exactly been pulling up trees as they come into the Premier League, struggling a bit, but still playing that great brand of football. He's only had one coaching job, but it's been an amazing one, taking a team in 18 months, 2 divisions up and into the Premier League. And at times even looking like a Premier League side, competing on a Premier League Saturday or Sunday. So would that be the type of hire United should be looking to make, Paul? Not the type of hire they will make. Should they be looking for a guy like McKenna that actually gets it, understands United, knows what it's like to be in the building and maybe even win something, and could give them the stability for the longer term project? Like, is that what they should be looking for? I'm not asking if you think they'll hire him or not. Is that the type of guy you think they should be hiring if they're not hiring a Frank or a Paul?
Spending 10 minutes on this, saying like how I didn't think these guys at the mid-table were good fits. This one makes sense to me, though. Like, this one makes sense. This, to me, is the best fit of all of them, because I think when you are a great club, you want to take somebody that's been from within your organization and you want to have them be a part of reinstalling that culture of when you were great, right? And like, I think the fact that he's been through that youth setup and seen that from the inside out under some great managers is probably pretty important. If I'm United and there's not a legendary manager that can step in with a huge personality and make the team his personality in the way a Jose or a Jurgen would be able to do, like, to me, it almost makes sense that you flip this side, you keep the core that's young, which is great, between Diallo and Garnacha and all these younger cats coming through. Manu, all those guys. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, that you would have a younger, lesser known manager that has tons of promise, that's very, very well familiar with your club and your culture. It makes sense. So much so that they probably won't do it.
They probably won't even consider it. And to be honest, for all we know, McKenna will be out of work and might be available by then. Because if Ipswich's results keep going the way they are, I'm not sure he'll be able to hang on too much longer. So if we look across Europe, the hot rumor, of course, is that Ruben Amorim might be the guy that, like you're talking about, the one that coyly is already in communication with them. Now, I find it funny that every time a job opens in the Premier League, somehow Ruben Amorim is having negotiations around getting the job, yet no team has ever admitted that they offered him a contract or even talked to him yet. So until I see him like on the radar of a Premier League team, I'm just going to say that his PR people are extremely good at linking him to jobs, because everything I read is that he's one of the like short list to potentially replace Pep should he step down at the end of the season, which is the big rumor that everyone believes will happen. So I'll ask you this. If you were Amorim, would you take the money and run if United comes calling? He's, a hot commodity under the age of 40, just retired, I think, 5 years ago from playing. Seems a really good up-and-coming candidate, but hasn't done it outside of the Portuguese league. Like, would you take that United job? Would you hold out and see if maybe the City job comes available, or there's a better job for you in Spain? He seems almost too hot a young candidate. to be the next guy at Man United. But then again, that's what people said about Ten Hag.
I think for him and his position, I would take a job like Manchester United if it was offered to me. Like versus holding out for City, like that. First of all, that's not guaranteed. You don't like, and I think there's enough volatility around what's happening with City that you don't have any guarantees, right? Like, so for me, I would definitely do that. And if you don't get United, I mean, there's plenty of big jobs that are going to open up across Spain and Italy that are going to be big clubs and decent climates.
The other European managers being bandied about, Edin Terzic at Dortmund, Simone Inzaghi at Inter, former Barcelona manager Xavi, of course Zidane, who's never going to United, and the one that would scare me the most if they got him, which is German national team manager Julian Nagelsmann, because I think he's one of the really great, like, actual coaches, like tactical coaches, and makes players better and teams better when he's given a chance. Any of those names jump out at you? Do you think United has the pulling power to get someone like Nagelsmann to seriously consider walking away from that German national team?
No, I don't. Like, I actually think that Nagelsmann's kind of built for international football in a weird way. Like, I feel like that there's not very managers that are, but I feel like he is, because he's such a football mind, and he's so driven at like the tactics and then the pieces that are fitting into those tactics that, like, I almost think that it's like he almost overshoots the politics of international football and is really good at just like dealing with like, hey, I've got 50 of the best, make them work. Like, he's the guy you want doing that, right? And I don't know if that works as well. Like, I don't know if he's like necessarily an empire builder in terms of like building a culture and growing a team, like in the way that you would need somebody like Jurgen to do that at that club like United. There's nobody that you name that I like over the moon about United getting or necessarily scares me. So yeah, like this is where we keep coming back to. Like, we went through this list of names. We talked about the one that made sense, probably not happening. So like for me, it's like one of these things where like I could see them going into next year with Van Nistelrooy. No matter what they say about that not being the case, I could see that.
I think if they go into January without a manager in place, I think their supporters are going to lose their mind, because they're just going to feel like they're an absolute stuck. And I do think that if these owners do that, they're going to show that they are truly a little over their head right now, and they may be a little bit inept as well. Because I think that if you wait to fire him till now and you don't have the guy, then what are you really doing? Like, firing him makes even less sense unless you really think you have the guy. I don't care how bad it got. I mean, let's be honest. If they don't call a terrible penalty yesterday, he probably doesn't get fired for the 1-1 draw. And that, to me, just shows that they may just be completely out to lunch. But